Hi guys, it's Ebird Online, and I'm here with the final part of my review for 90 Day Fiance. And this is Season 7, Episode 5, We Need to Talk. And in this episode I'm going to be talking about Tania and Syngin, Robert and Anny, and Anna and Marsul. And as per usual, Tanya is stretching the limits of reasonable behaviour to the very limit. And we'll be talking a little bit later about what we think the outcome of her doing this will be. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Come on, join my flock. And if you put on your bell notification, you're not going to miss any videos whatsoever. And also don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. And I'd like to give a big warm hug to everybody that's subscribed thus far. I'm very appreciative of your support. Thank you so much. Right, so without further ado, we're going to talk about Anna and Marsul. And we first see Anna at home, and she's making honey jar favours for her wedding. Honey jar favours. I think I'd want liquid gold to be in those bottles to make it worthwhile me travelling across America to see you get married to somebody that you can barely speak to. I'd certainly need more than bloody honey. But what's happening outside? Anna's instructed Marsul to make a honeycomb altar, and he's making it out of wood. And to be fair, I actually looked at it and thought that would make excellent shelves. I pretty much want it for myself. That could be a new business for you, Marsul. And when we go outside to speak to Marsul, he helpfully explains that the reason they're making a honeycomb altar is because they're both beekeepers, and honeycombs are to do with bees. Thank you, Marsul. Thank you for the clarification. Anna tells us that she's overwhelmed right now because of everything to do with the wedding. She's got to organise it, but she's doing that whilst trying to deal with her kids and the communication problems with Marsul. Anna goes outside with Marsul to look at the honeycomb altar, and she asks him, of course via her translation app, how do you feel about the wedding? And Marsul says, a little nervous. And Anna says, why? And Marcel tells them, because two of your friends, Gio and Nina, I heard them talking and they said Marsul is stupid. Permission to speak? Oh no, I'll leave it. Ebird, don't be so nasty. And then Anna said, do you want to talk to them about it? And Marsul said, no. Anna said, why? Well, it's bothering you. Anna, it should be bothering you if your friends are saying that the person you're going to marry is an idiot. I know I've said it, but these people have actually met him and actually know him. And I think, Anna, you should be having Marsul's back on this one and taking your friends to one side and saying, one, don't call my fiancé an idiot, but if you are going to do so, at least don't do it where he can hear what you're saying. I know he only knows about 5 words of English, but unsurprisingly, idiot is one of them. And then Anna bores us once again about the language problems they've been having, and she says we need to work on communication. Anna, you should have thought about learning Turkish and he English before you even got together. I can't believe the low level of your communication. It's shocking. And then Anna said to Marsul, when I ask a question, you only say yes, no, or okay. Why is that? And then Marsul proved her wrong by saying, I don't know. Fantastic, something different. But Marsul lets us in on a secret which is unsurprising to me. He says he does it to dodge Anna's questions and to avoid arguments, because most of the questions that she asks are questions to which he doesn't have the answer, or he does have the answer and she wouldn't like it if he gave it to her, such as, why don't you tell my parents about your children? Such as, why haven't you learned English? Such as, do you definitely want to marry me? And such as, do you like America? You know, little questions like that. But there is something that Marcel does want to communicate about, and that's Anna's spoiled kids. And he says to her, your children are very spoiled. And Anna said, I'm not talking about the boys right now. I want to talk about how you feel about our marriage. But Anna, I think you'll find the whole thing is intrinsically linked. Anna, you want your communication to get better. It seems to me that you want something that you cannot have because you've made no steps to work towards it. Anna dejectedly said to Marsul, I don't know if I want to get married because you never listen to me. And then Marsul laughs and says, yes, really, Marsul does not care. And at this point, neither do I. These two are boring. They shouldn't be getting married. There's no love between them. But yet in the next scene, we see Anna with one of her friends going to pick out a wedding dress. And she walks along the street as if she's walking to the gallows to her certain death. She says she's going to try and enjoy herself. Well, that's more than we'll be doing. When she gets into the shop assistant says, do you know what you're looking for other than a wedding dress? She doesn't. And she says Marsul is Muslim, so whatever I choose must be modest. However, we are in America. She said, whatever I pick, I can't have a short dress, that's for sure. Anna, you couldn't have a short dress anyway. It would look absolutely terrible on you. And she picks out 2 or 3 dresses, the first of which has a high bust line. And Anna says it has too much coverage. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it wasn't particularly flattering. And then she suddenly decides, this is my wedding day and I'm going to do what I want. I think you'll find, Anna, the wedding day belongs to both you and Marsul. But I digress. She goes and tries on another dress, and it's a bustier style, but it's quite full in the skirt. And Anna says this dress is the one. And we can see from this that Anna is as thorough as ever. She's tried on 2 dresses in one store, and she chooses one of those dresses. She had absolutely no idea what she wanted before she went there, but now she's sure this is the one. It's pretty much how you choose your husbands. No wonder it's all going wrong. The dress suits you about as much as Marsul Marsul does. But then talk turns to Marsul with her friend, and she asks, how's he been doing? And Anna said, quiet, but I'm good. I'm sure that Marsul's the one. And then she starts crying. Yep, you usually cry when the one presents himself to you. I know I did. And at this point, Anna's not even managing to fool herself. And in a piece to camera, her friend has to pep talk herself. And she says, yep, I'm sure everything's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. No, it's not going to be fine. It's not going to be great. It's going to be rubbish. It's going to be a disaster. Anna, call it off now before it's too late. And that's everything for Anna and Marsul for this week. And next I'm going to be talking about Robert and Anny. So I've discovered quite a few things in the last week or so, and one of them is that Stephanie, i.e. otherwise known as Porno Granny, is actually called Diamond Fox, with 3 X's at the end of Fox. And I've discovered she has many videos on Pornhub, and my subs have been contacting me all week to give me details of Diamond Fox and her titles. I've discovered that lots of men watch 90 Day Fiance, and they also watch Pornhub. I've yet to decide which one is more embarrassing. But back to the story, we catch up with Anny and Robert at home having breakfast with Robert's son Bryson, and they're still going on about these photos. Robert says she wants me to delete photos of exes, and I feel a certain way about it. Robert, she doesn't want you to delete them, she just wants you to take them off Facebook. Some of them are with your kids, and that's not as much of a problem as the ones that are with just your exes. All you need to do is take them off Facebook and put them onto your phone or put them onto your desktop. And as per usual, you're gaslighting, saying she wants me to delete them all. I'm not getting rid of photos of my kids. And I can see Annie's point to a certain degree. I don't think it's fair that he has to get rid of ones of his kids, but I don't think she's even asking for the kids. He's the only one that's mentioned that. She doesn't want to see the exes, and nor would I, because if you've got exes on your partner's Facebook, it displays not just to the exes but to other people that 1, he's a player, and 2, that he's maybe still got a torch for 1 or 2 of his exes, and it's just a little bit muggy. And then they both decide to go to a boxing gym to let off steam. Yes, Robert, it sounds like a fantastic idea. What we all want is for you to be more aggressive. And they go into the gym, and their boxing trainer is somebody called Micheal. And yep, you guessed it, Miguel's Spanish too. He starts talking to Anny and asks where she's from. She says the Dominican, and they start speaking Spanish together. Obviously, Robert doesn't like it. He says he hopes they're not talking about their relationship. I think you need to be more worried about the fact that Micheal is fit, and Anny might decide she wants to trade you in for a bit of Spanish boxing trainer. She starts jabbing, and Anny says she loves it because she's releasing all her anger. And she asks Micheal, can I get into shape boxing? I can answer that, Anny. Yes, you can. You can have a completely different shape. You can have ears in the shape of cauliflowers, and you can have your nose spread across your cheeks. Anything's possible with boxing. But Anny continues, I'm getting married. And she starts to tell Micheal about the 90 days. Micheal says to Robert, you have to get married in 90 days. What happens if you don't? And then Robert gleefully says, then Anny has to go back to the Dominican. And you can tell at this point that Robert thinks he holds all the power. And Micheal asks, what's the craziest question you're asked in order to get your K1 visa? And Anny thought about it for a minute, and she said, why would you marry a man you've only met for 1 day? Anny, that is not the craziest question. That's the most normal question in the world. And it's a question that Ebird asks herself every time she sees both of your faces. And in a piece to camera, Micheal says Anny looks like she's hard to handle, and I think Robert's got his work cut out with her. I'll be very surprised if they last 2 months. And back in the gym, Annie's still complaining. She says Robert hides stuff from me, such as photos of exes. And then Robert said, it's me and my kids. Anny says, no, there's photos of you and your ex-girlfriends, and there's actually a photo of you kissing one of your ex-girlfriends in the mouth. And Robert said, well, I'm not taking them down, and that's that. Anny asks Robert, what would you do if I put up photos with my exes? And quick as a flash, Robert said, if you do, you can call that MF and have him take you to the airport. Deuces. Really, Robert? So what's sauce for the goose isn't sauce for the gander? If it would irritate you so much for Anny to have exes on her Facebook and on her Insta, why don't you realise that it's going to be irritating to her? And back in the gym, Anny tells Micheal, if he doesn't delete the photos, I don't know if I want to marry him. And Micheal says again, I think she's a handful. I don't know how long this is going to last, but then again, I'm not a marriage counsellor. Micheal, you don't need to be a marriage counsellor to know this is a terrible relationship. You just need to have a pair of eyes and a pair of ears. Robert says that he might be able to compromise, and he says me and my kids is necessary. No complaints from anyone there, Robert. There never was. And my kids are going to be a part of my life till I leave this earth, or until you decide not to pay child support, Robert. And I think Robert needs to keep the photos on Facebook because it's the only place he sees most of his children. He needs to keep photos of his women too, so he can remember who's who. And when we next catch up with Robert, he's on his way to see porn star Granny, and Robert tells us the first meeting with Ben and Stephanie, aka porn star Granny, aka Diamond Fox, went horrible. Right now, Anny can't stand Stephanie, and it's important that they get along for the sake of Bryson, and they all meet up in a bar. Robert says he's nervous, and although he was running off his mouth last week saying no one's going to disrespect my lady lady, except me. When he went to sit down with them, he was a different kettle of fish, and he said, I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding, and there's a couple of issues we need to iron out. The first one, why did you ask about birth control? It's nothing to do with you, it's out of line. Granny said, the last thing you need at the moment is a baby. And Robert quite rightly said, if we choose not to have a baby, that's for us to decide. And the truth be told, the last thing they need at the moment is a baby, but somebody else's body has nothing to do with you. You're only dealing with this situation because your daughter's either up or left. And I've also heard the rumour she's in prison. Who knows where she is? But if not for that, there wouldn't be the space in Robert's bed for this to even happen. And to camera, Granny says, I wish I felt bad about it, but I don't, Granny. There's lots of things that you should feel bad about, and clearly you don't. I'm going to define later all the problems I see with Granny and her combative stance on Annie, and all the reasons why she has no reason to try and pull the moral high ground. And Ben said, Annie came along so suddenly. Ben, ask your partner about coming suddenly. She knows all about that. Granny said, I was blindsided. I'm sorry I came on a bit strong. We already know you're not sorry. I guess it's none of my business. No, you're right, it isn't any of your business. And Robert says Bryson loves Annie and she loves him. She takes him to school and she looks after him. And then Ben looks thoughtful and said, but Robert, when you talk about Annie, you only talk about your benefits. Is this about love, or is it more about you being able to work more and her babysitting? And to camera, Robert says he can't believe it. How can they question his love for Annie? 1, because you speak to her as if she's a dirty dog. 2, because you treat her as if she's a cheap hooker. 3, because you're dismissive of anything that Annie seems to want, whether it be financial or emotional. And 4, because you only met her for 8 hours before offering a ringless proposal of marriage. 5, because you promised to get an iPhone, albeit an older model, and then reneged on that. The list is endless. That's why we don't think it's love, Robert. And then Porno Granny says, is she just using you for a green card? I'm worried that this will all backfire. Robert will be financially responsible for Annie, and it will be a nightmare. Well, to be quite honest, you cannot get blood out of a stone. Robert doesn't have any money, so I wouldn't worry about it too much if I were you. And then Porno Granny says, I want to come to the wedding. What? And eat and drink off of Robert? Absolutely no way. And Robert says, there'll be no wedding until we sit down and sort it out. If you squash the beef, then I'll consider it. And Granny concedes, well, we do have to get along for the sake of Bryson. So what do you guys think? I think Granny is far more damaging to Bryson than Annie could ever be. What happens when Bryson's friends and they start Googling Diamond Fox and start watching her quite extensive body of film work? That's going to be very damaging. Secondly, where's your daughter? You go on and on about how unsuitable you find Annie, but at least Annie is actually there looking after Bryson. It's more than we can say for your daughter. Where is she? Why isn't she present in his life in any meaningful sort of way? And if she is in prison, and that's the reason for her absence, why do you let Robert get away with saying things like, she left in the middle of the night and we don't know where she is or why she left? Why don't you address these issues? And then you've accused everybody of everything. Annie for wanting a green card, Robert for wanting a live-in nanny and a maid. And yes, of course, we know that both these things are true. But let's stop for a while and let's look at your relationship. Why is Ben going out with you? Are you the love of Ben's life? Does Ben mind what you do for a line of work? Or is he just happy in the fact that you make loads of money? Let's analyse your relationship, shall we? You have no right to ask such personal questions to Annie, such as birth control. Your relationship at the moment is with Robert. So if you want to talk to him about birth control, speak to him. Because Robert having other kids isn't really dependent on whether Annie takes birth control or not. Robert is quite capable of impregnating females left and right in the Miami area and the New York state. So let's talk to Robert about his birth control. Thus far, Annie has no kids, so I think it's fair to assume she knows about birth control. Robert, it seems, didn't attend school on Sex Ed Day and doesn't seem to know about birth control or the resulting consequences. So it's Robert that you need to get together on this issue and not Annie, whom you've just met. And then Granny was also out of order because she was unrepentant about the questions that she asked. Most people would have a problem if they got together with the guy and his ex-mother-in-law was a Pornhub star. And so Granny would have been better advised to try and debunk myths of her unsuitability for being around Bryson by at least being a nice human being, instead of coming on really strong and acting holier than thou. For some reason, Granny thinks she's sitting on the moral high ground. I'm here to tell you, Granny, oh no, you're not. And to a man, I think everybody would agree with me. So tell me what you think. Do you think that Granny overstepped the mark with Annie? I think Granny should have had the chat with Robert instead. Let me know your thoughts down below. And also let me know what you think about the whole taking his exes off social media. And for the final part of this review, we have Tanya and Syngin. And they're driving to have lunch with all of her family. They're going to meet her mum, cousins, aunties, the whole caboodle. And she tells us things are going great thus far. I don't want to know what you think, Tanya. I'd like to know what Syngin thinks. Thank you very much. And as they're driving down the motorway, Syngin tells us he's nervous about meeting the whole family. And he said he's met the sister and the mum before because they visited Cape Town. And he said he could see the hot-headedness and that it's a very strong female group, and is worried about being the only white guy in a very Latin culture. But as he walks in, you can see he had no reason whatsoever to worry, and everybody welcomed him massively to the family. Tanya's granny, Mercedes, said, "Hi, I'm Tanya's granny," and he gave her a massive bear hug, and he said, "You're my granny too now." And I absolutely loved that, because you could see a genuine warmth between them, and you could really see that Syngin really wants to make a good impression, and he really wants to get to know them all as people. And I absolutely love Tanya's granny, Mercedes. She's a very strong character, and you could tell she's warm and loving, but also she knows my blood is my blood, and I will defend the honour of my family. We take him like a family now, but we expect him to respect us too, or I'll be the first one to get in his face. I be defending my blood. And back in the room, we hear a baby crying, and we see her sister, Tiana the Truth, with her husband and her new baby. And Syngin says, "Oh my god, I've never been around babies before." And they pass the baby for him to hold, and he seems super at ease. And he held the baby saying, "The baby's not crying, so it's all good." And Tanya says, "You look such a natural." But Syngin's worried again. He said, "Everybody's pushing me and asking, when's the baby coming? Everyone's putting pressure on me." Let's face fact, guys, he's only been here for a week, so I think he's actually quite right. And Tanya said, "I'm 29. When I'm 30, half of my eggs literally disappear." And Syngin looks at her as if she's actually lost her mind. And he said, "Where did you read that? In a book?" And Tanya went, yeah. What book was that, Tanya? Tanya's book of absolute bullcrap and lies. One quick look at Google tells us women as teenagers have 300 to 400,000 remaining eggs. And from that point on, approximately 1,000 eggs die each month. So whilst your fertility is always declining, Tanya, it doesn't mean that you've got to have kids immediately. If it's such a big deal, why don't you take some of your eggs out and freeze them? That way, if you're running your clock down, you've got a backup. And guys, between you and me, I think that Tanya loses 1,000 brain cells every month as well. But there's a massive shock in store, because Tanya informs us she's going to Costa Rica in 3 weeks for a month. Syngin's not allowed to leave the country because of his K1 visa status. So she's going to leave him on his own in the bloody shed in the mother's backyard. And if things weren't bad enough, they're set to get worse for Syngin. Why is she going to Costa Rica? Because she's going to learn how to be a herbalist from Afro-Caribbean people. She wants to learn about herbal remedies and medicines, etc. She wants to come back to America and be a herbal witch doctor. Tanya, any herbal remedies which already work in the Caribbean are already used in one form or another in the US and in the rest of the world anyway. I understand that it sounds exciting for you to be a herbal witch doctor, but you need to think about careers which will facilitate you getting out of a shed and into a house. You need to think about careers which will facilitate you procreating with one of your rapidly depleting eggs. You need to find a career which will facilitate you and Syngin building a property and driving around America, which is what you want to do. And I'm not sure that an Afro-Caribbean herbal witch doctor is going to be the one. In fact, I can almost say with some certainty it isn't going to be the one. But Tanya says she can't put it off for another year. Last year she put it off due to her volunteering work. Volunteering to get removed from the Senate whilst shouting through our political process. And then another year she was saving up for Syngin to come over. Tanya, for what did you save? The shed was already there. Were you saving for rose petals? Sex aids maybe? Frick and frack to be in the room next door to you when you had a hotel in New York. It certainly wasn't for your clothes. And just a side note to that, Tanya, you always look an absolute mess. According to you, I look the bomb. Angela from Before the 90 Days is more well dressed than you are. Just saying. And then Tiana the Truth pipes up yet again, and she says it's a recipe for disaster. Syngin says it's not at all what I wanted, and now we've got a whole month less to discover if we're compatible. And he says he doesn't understand why she wants to go, but his face tells a different story. And guys, I've got to tell you, this shows to me just how inflexible, unreasonable and downright selfish Tanya actually is. Tiana the Truth told us that she was selfish and self-interested, and never a truer word spoken. The government have given people 90 days to discover if they want to be married to each other. Even the government pretty much know this is the least time that we can give to people. This is a very minimum requirement. Tanya thinks she can rewrite everything and say, we don't need 3 months, we only need 2. But then again, the truth be told, Syngin only needed about 3 days to work out that Tanya was a selfish mofo. So guys, tell me, what do you think? Do you, like Ebird, think that Tanya's utterly ridiculous? Do you think Tanya just wants to indulge in crackpot schemes and she just wants to seem to wing her way through life life, doing whatever she wants to do on a whim. But yet when it comes to Syngin saying, I'd like to be a fireman or have some Hollywood auditions, she allowed Frick and Frack to say, oh no, you've got to pick a lane and stay in it. Guys, let me know what you think. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Make sure you don't miss any of my videos later in the week. I've got a special for you and it's something a little bit different, so stay tuned. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao for now.